With the release of the PlayStation 4 Pro, we've been feeling a little nostalgic around here. So we decided to stack up the PlayStation 4 Pro with its much older relative, the original PlayStation. A lot of the differences may seem obvious, like tech specs and stuff, but stacking them up to one another is incredibly sobering. We've come a long way, guys, and we're not even talking about other advancements in online and PC stuff. So let's take a look at these two consoles. The original PlayStation console was released in December of 1994 in Japan and September of 1995 for North America and Europe. With processing power at only 33 MHz, it really looks insane stacking up to the PS4 Pro's 64-bit AMD-based Jaguar, rocking 8 separate cores at 2.1 GHz. You're gonna wanna laugh at this, but the PlayStation's built-in system RAM was at 2 MB, and the video RAM was at 1 MB. Comparatively, the PlayStation 4 Pro has a system RAM of 8 GB of GDDR5, pushing 218 gigabits per second. The original PlayStation relied on CD-ROMs, while the PlayStation 4 relies on a Blu-ray disc drive, which is really a medium that people didn't even imagine back in the day. A Blu-ray can hold up to 50 gigabytes of data, while an original PlayStation CD-ROM could store 750 megabytes, which was considered impressive for the time. While developers were cramming little game worlds and stories on those discs, pushing boundaries with Gran Turismo and Metal Gear Solid, they pale in comparison to the open game world's vast stories and insanely deep gameplay that they pack onto modern games today. I mean, look at the difference. I can never get over this. With the original Crash Bandicoot coming in at around 500 megabytes on the disc, think how many Crash Bandicoots you could fit on the PlayStation 4 Pro's 1 terabyte hard drive. Hard drive space and memory in consoles now is used for everything from screenshots to save data to the actual digital versions of the games themselves, while with the PSX for game saves, we relied on memory cards that were 1 megabyte. Yeah, 1 megabyte, I shit you not. The original PlayStation could output up to 640 by 480 pixels. That's technically a 480i resolution, and it boasted over 16.7 million colors. Now, the PS4 Pro is capable of up to 3840 by 2160. For the uninitiated, that's 4K resolution, and it's boasting a bleeding-edge color gamut with HDR technology. PS4 Pro also has 3 USB 3.0 ports. USB didn't even find itself in mainstream production and integration until late 1996. All you really had were those proprietary plugs to plug the controllers into. Do you remember pulling them out and blowing in them if they didn't work? I did. And do you remember how quickly those cables frayed? I certainly do. Speaking of the controller, the original PSX controller saw the addition of dual analog sticks not long after its release in 1997. By 1998, the controllers were reconfigured and rebranded as DualShock as we know them today. Now in 2016, we have the DualShock 4. Not only is it completely wireless, but it has 6-axis motion sensing, an LED light bar that changes colors, and a touchpad. Just look at these controllers stacked against one another. In your head, if you've been playing these games for years, they seem really similar. You use them the same way, but when you look at them next to each other, they feel like completely different objects. They almost look foreign from one another, especially on paper. And of course, it's worth mentioning that the newer PlayStation consoles are blessed with wonderful things like downloads, software updates, having to be connected to the internet, DLC, season passes, and all those wonderful things. The PlayStation 4 is like a lot of modern technology. The more complicated it gets, the more moving parts it gets, the more issues and complications it has. Because it's really just not a PS4 that needs software updates all the time. Sometimes your car needs software updates. Hell, your TV needs a firmware update sometimes. That's just how things work now, but of course, every once in a while, we like to sit down and recognize how awesome it was to pop open a console, put a game in, and start playing. You don't have to worry about any bug fixes or patches. Games just came the way they were, whether they had flaws or not, and most of the time, they managed to not have many. Myself and many other people playing the original PlayStation couldn't even fathom the idea of playing online with other people. But here we are today, playing online more often than we would play on a couch with a friend, split screen. It's really pretty crazy when we stack it all up, but we made this video more as a conversation piece. We want to hear from you guys. What do you think about the evolution of consoles down in the comments? I go through and I break down the differences from a hardware and technical perspective, but there are jarring differences with how we played games in 1995 and how we play games in 2016. So I want to hear from you guys. Do you like modern gaming? Are you okay with all the patches, the updates, the downloads, the internet connections, and the complications within those to get better games? Or were you a bigger fan of the simplicity in games back in the day? Because while there are a lot of caveats now, games have never been crazier, awesome, or more ambitious. But if you're younger and you didn't experience games before the modern era, how do you feel about the stuff I talked about back then? Could you ever see yourself going back to that point and playing that way? Honestly, let's talk about anything gaming down in the comments below. I do want to thank our friends at The Revolution in good old Stony Brook, New York for hooking us up with this PlayStation.
Tell me pretty lies, look me in the face, tell me that you love me, even if it's